Okay, I'm here with Minority Leader Tom Saadi. I just want to talk a little bit about the special session of the Common Council that occurred today. One of my primary concerns here is that I'm looking here at the minutes or the agenda that I downloaded online, and I'm looking at item 1, 2, and 3. Item 1 was the resolution of intent. Number 2 is the ordinance for the Danbury Solid Waste Authority, and number 3 was the communication for the request of funds for legal fees. And there was also an executive session that I know we can't talk about, but I just want to talk about primarily these first three. Okay, that's Joe Cabo. When I went online to try to find information about these specific items, the resolution or the ordinance, I found nothing there. A lot of the public are left out in the dark in terms of what's going on here. This special session of the Common Council, from what I understand, was brought up Friday at the State of the City address. He actually handed out notices to some of the members of the Common Council there. What can you tell us about what is going on here? Because a lot of the public does not know what's happening.
I can tell you a lot about the three items.
All right.
The first item, the resolution of intent, is not an intent to take the property. It's a resolution required that if we end up floating bonds, and that goes to the second item, which is the creation potentially of a municipal solid waste authority, that any expenses that the city incurs for legal fees or environmental research or consulting firms with regard to a potential takeover of the operation at 307 White Street, the city would be reimbursed through the bonds that a potential municipal solid waste authority would issue. The reason that that's required is the federal government under the U.S. The tax code doesn't allow the city, for example, to pay for an expense and then 6 months later, a year later, decide, you know what, we want to float bonds in order to pay for that. We have to say now our intent is to incur this expense, and then we'd like to have them reimbursed through bonds that would be potentially floated down the road. If those bonds are never floated and that income from those bonds never comes in, then the city would be responsible for it. That goes to the second item, which is to create an ordinance to create a municipal solid waste authority, like a Richter Park Authority, a Candlewood Lake Authority. They're statutory creatures that we can create to oversee certain operations within the city, whether it's a park, a golf course, or in this case, a solid waste facility. That's going to a public hearing, and that's going to a committee of the whole. Probably take place in mid-January. So that wasn't even voted on. That was referred to a hearing. I don't think the council members have enough information to decide that they want to necessarily vote for this right now. That's why it's going to a public hearing, as all ordinances are required, and we can get hopefully a lot of public input then. The final item, which is legal fees, are the legal fees the city has incurred to date and which will incur within the next several weeks regarding the municipal transfer station, the attempt to take it over, whether it's eminent domain, whether it's through some sort of negotiated process with the U.S. Marshals and with the landowners. And those legal fees then go back to item 1, which is an intent to try to recoup those monies through a bond if the authority goes forward. Basically what that means is that tonight, wheels were put in motion, but nothing definitively was voted on. We did discuss the land issue, valuation, and things like that in executive session, but that was an executive session.
Right.
We can't openly discuss that because that would necessarily show our hand to individuals who may want to up the price artificially.
I understand.
But what people need to understand is you need to get your voice heard at the public hearing. Probably be mid-January, maybe Monday the 12th or the Monday right after that. Most public hearings are on Mondays. And express your feelings. Do you think we should, as a policy, own and operate or oversee a municipal solid waste facility? Some people inherently believe that it's better public policy to have that than to have some outsider, some private company, some maybe less than honorable organization of some kind run it, or even an honorable organization that just doesn't run it very well. And I can tell you the state of Connecticut has had, unfortunately, myriad experiences with private facilities that have been disaster areas, and the Attorney General's office has taken action against them. That's the first question. The second question is issue of cost. And that's something that's going to have to be decided. But we didn't authorize any of that tonight. Tonight we're sending things to public hearing and this intent to cover potential expenses with bonding money if the bonds are floated.
Well, just as a personal thing, from my standpoint, in terms of transparency, I'm looking here at something I pulled off online. Yeah. Usually there's a PDF that accompanies this with information regarding these three items. There was nothing there.
Right.
A lot of this came up on Friday. a lot of the public is unaware about this because we're running into a Christmas week and basically just don't know much about what's going on here. And if I understand, this transfer station is in your ward. Am I correct?
It's in the 4th ward. It's been an issue. We try to deal with issues of traffic, issues of odor. Sometimes they've been addressed. Sometimes they haven't been addressed. From a standpoint of public policy, I would tend to err on the side of it being publicly owned, because then we have a governmental entity that's responsible and held responsible to the voters. But that's what people need to decide, whether they believe in as a matter of public policy, should it be publicly owned or privately owned to the highest bidder. I think the highest bidder isn't necessarily the right way to go, but how we get there is the issue, and how much it's going to cost. The issue of the items on the agenda, I think they're all online now. My understanding was that they had to be redrafted, and they weren't available. I didn't have them on Friday, and that's why I went into executive session. There was a lot of discussion on these items. And the key thing was making sure that we weren't voting and putting anything in concrete tonight. This is all fluid.
Okay.
Absolutely fluid right now. And we got that on the record. So there's opportunity for public comment. There's no bonds that are floated or voted on tonight. There's no authority created tonight. But it's the beginning of a process. So you have to go through the public hearing process and go through all that. So people need to keep on top of these things, go to the website, look at the agendas, and comment as they see fit.
All right, well, we'll stay on top of this story, and we'll keep the people informed. Thank you very much for your time.